The Absolute Way of Living. Chapter 7. Meeting for Answers. The meeting of unanswered questions was just at the corner, every animal prepared meticulously for it. It was the last meeting with the tortoise, and they were as excited as they were sad. Their excitement brewed from the interesting debate of the previous meeting, their sadness from the soon-to-be demise of the favorite sage of the forest. Most of them believed the tortoise to be gone, for no one had heard from him for a time. Most of the animals thought the meeting would be cancelled with the announcement of the demise of the tortoise or so, for those were the rumors spreading. Many had their theories, but the bat waited in patience. Deep in her heart she was optimistic, for she knew the tortoise was not yet gone and her business with him not yet over. The newest deaths in the forests were welcomed with a mixture of fear and surprise. Fear emanating from the fact that these animals, after having participated in the meeting of unanswered questions on a very important topic, just lost their lives very dramatically. Many accounts of their deaths circulated, all of which were far from the truth and very surprising to the bat. The most popular ones being, the mole, after visiting the farm with Weasel, was betrayed by him in an attempt to save his own life. A great betrayal from a dearest friend. This, according to them, was the reason for which the guilt-infested weasel had not been sighted ever since the death of his supposed friend. A rumor so happily propagated by the lizard, after a quarrel with the weasel over food which didn't belong to him. The other was the tale of the lioness, so happily propagated by her enemies. Hers was the issue of justice, a justice from Mother Nature, for although she thought of herself as the most powerful and beyond advice and control, she got what she deserved after treading on dangerous grounds. It is one thing to be powerful, you would often hear them say, and it's another to listen to advice. Others would say, pride is the downfall of everyone and regret the common feeling of the grave. Unfortunately, this is the way of the world, for tale-bearers are seldom witnesses. At long last it was the day. All the animals went about their daily activities in haste, for no one wanted an unattended business to interfere with the meeting. At least, the perfect view of the tortoise or a sit under his feet could give an animal a bit of prestige for a week. But the lesser animals knew it better to let their excitement get them in the way of their sovereigns, for though the law of the fellowship was respected by all, its benefits lasted only for a night. The crowd was outstanding. The animals came in their numbers. Those who missed out on the previous one had vowed not to miss out on this. The great had their place as well as the small, the representatives of the majority came in their numbers, the law enforcer was present to ensure law and order in the meeting, and the great sage was present as well as the bat. After the crowd had settled, the elephant called for silence. It was time for the tortoise to address the crowd. Children, the time has come for me to leave you. I have lived to a ripe old age, and alas, I go to my fathers before me. But before I do, I see it fit to leave with you all, a food for thought. It has been a year since our last meeting, and the question still remained, what is the absolute way of living, and is it good to be alone or in a company? How many of you then have thought it through and is ready to give the answer? The crowd was quiet for a while, as was expected, for no one dared answer the tortoise without thinking it through. After a while, the crow cleared his throat to gain the attention of the crowd. The gods are not blind, neither are they dumb. They see and speak to us daily, fulfilling our deepest desires and answering our toughest questions. The absolute way of life is indeed a difficult thing to grasp, only if aided by the wisdom of nature. I said it earlier and I will still stand on it, for I too have an ear for the whispers of the wind. Mother Nature, in her infinite wisdom, thought it wise that no one should live alone. Thus, she made us male and female, but to some of us, the mantle of celibacy had been passed for specific reasons and duties of which I carry out wholeheartedly. I would advise you all to emulate me in my ways, for blessed will be the one who hands over his life to the service of the gods, leaving all the cares and worries of this life behind. Only then will he be truly blessed. His speech was welcomed with a huge round of applause and a heap of praises from his most devout followers. The crow sat proudly in his seat of honor, feeling pleased with himself and his words. Even the great elephant could be seen smiling at the crow, for she too was convinced. The bat hung quietly at her usual place. At least she was one of the few animals who saw through the showmanship of the crow. After the jeers had died down, the ant spoke up. "His Eminence the Crow has spoken, but with humility, I seek to differ in my response. I was taught right from childhood the importance of togetherness, and I lived up to those lessons. It was until recently that I had a change in mind through a bitter experience. Company is survival, but only to an extent. There's much gain in building oneself, even amidst company. Being on one's own is equally as important as being in a company. The concept of company is good but can be self-limiting, as I have learned. My only advice will be, know when to balance the two." The crowd got quiet for a while. The crow almost yelled out. Who was the ant to speak against his wisdom, or should he say wisdom of the gods? The tensed silence of the crowd was broken by the loud snarl of the tiger. A great chaos erupted as everybody started arguing. Many were in support of the view of the ant, the others were in support of the crow. The only silent ones were the tortoise, the representatives of the majority, the elephant and the bat. After a while, the tortoise raised his hand for silence. He had gotten what he needed. Heated hearts and confused minds. Any other opinion would be very welcomed on the subject matter, he said. The place was dead silent. Even the so-called elites from the representatives seemed to hide their faces from the onlooking crowd. The bat seized her opportunity to shine, much to the expectation of the tortoise, for he had waited to hear the bat talk, and now the wait would not be in vain. "My friends and elders," she said. "Since the beginning of this meeting, I have been quiet and observant as I had done in the earlier meeting. I chose not to speak because I seem not to have an identity among you, but thanks to the wisdom and grace of the tortoise, I embarked on the quest for the answers to the topic which had since bullied us. The absolute way of living." Mr. Crow had spoken earlier and eloquently on the subject area, and I greet him with respect. I will say his quest for righteousness is admirable, but with reference to the question at hand, his answer then and now has been hypocritically ambiguous and unrealistic, for he seems not to have a stand the topic discussed. Her assertion sparked within the crowd mixed feelings of surprise and curiosity. Surprise in the hearing of her speech, against the word of the messenger of the gods, with the confidence they had never seen before, and curiosity in the sense of wanting to hear what she had to say. "My friends and elders," she continued in her speech. "It is true that we were made male and female, a prerequisite for procreation. We do so through mating. In the human world, they do so on the average, in an institution called marriage. But can that stand for the case for company? Mating happens only at a season, and most married people prefer to live separate or alone lives. Taking a vow of celibacy is an admirable thing to do, for it takes a lot of discipline and sacrifice, virtues I thought Crow would show with respect to the widow of Dove, but unfortunately, it's the weight of a lie that pulls the hypocrite down the pit of pretense. For months I had embarked on an assignment of the tortoise, observing the lives of all the animals that spoke fervently during the first meeting, and these were my findings. The mole was my first test subject with the claim, company is danger, but was she wrong? Obviously not. For we all had had to deal with competition, envy, tolerance, and betrayal at some points in our lives, but would being alone be the absolute way of living? For if the mole was a bit sociable, she would have known better than to visit the farm and meet such a gruesome untimely death, all alone in the cold of the night. This I know to be the true account of her death, not the one circulating in defamation of the character of the poor innocent weasel. The life of the ant was admirable in observation, for she was my second test subject. She worked in a colony that believes in hard work and togetherness, and it was no surprise that she spoke in the past meeting, company is upheld by the wise only. Here in this meeting you heard her speak out the wisdom she attained from her experience. The other test subject was the lioness. She believed in strength and confidence and the merits of being alone. A belief she so proudly expressed in her statement, "Company is for the weak." She died all alone and from her wounds, all because no one would visit. With all these put together, how would this congregation conclude? What then is the absolute way of living, alone or in a company? I will say there is no absolute way of living. Only the wise will know how to balance the two. There was silence in the meeting. Nobody saw this coming, but there it was. An indisputable answer. The tortoise's work was done and now he could sleep in peace. The tortoise rose to his feet and was joined by the other animals in a long round of applause. The cheers for the bat could be heard from a mile away. Everyone was happy except the crow, who silently flew away. The night was bright and lovely, the meeting had turned into a celebration, and who would have thought that the most difficult question would be answered by the bat? The tortoise walked to the bat. He was proud of his student. What would you prefer, he asked her, being wise or being right? Bat could remember this question. It was one of the many he asked in their previous meeting. Being wise, she said happily. You have learned well, he said proudly, now apply the wisdom you have acquired. Duty has been placed on you and you will do better in my stead. So with this, ended the tale of the quest for the absolute way of living. Now to you, my listener, what say you to the question? The tortoise and the bat had theirs to say. It's now yours to decide what the absolute way of living is. A wise man will always apply the lessons of another, but the rod of experience is readily available to guide us to the truth.